This is the template for a scope document. This is probably the most important document of all the ones that I'm planning to introduce you to, I think. This is the document where you describe the limits of what you're going to accomplish, and you're very clear about what you're not going to do. So it helps really shape and define your project. In my experience, this is the document where everybody finally gets it. You know, they really see what it is you're trying to do. And I've had circumstances where you have multiple different parties with really different ideas that you can kind of feel that maybe those ideas aren't quite meshing until we have a meeting and go over this document. So in that case, what I'll usually do is write out this document and distribute it, and then have a meeting and walk through it piece by piece and get feedback on every piece of it, because this is the kind of document that you don't just write once and leave alone. It's one that grows with your understanding of the project, and it grows with interaction with your team and your stakeholders generally. So it's a living document until a very specific point in the project, which I'll go into a bit later, but it's a really great starting point to discuss the project as a whole with everybody. So the sort of supervisors that might be related to it, and the actual team members. Anyway, so this is the template for it, but I'm going to speak to a completed version of the document here, which is one that I actually used. So, and see, I'm noting here that it's in stage 1, so this would be the first time you put this together, is sort of the very beginning of a project is stage 1. I'll go into that later. Anyway, so here we have, now we talked about on the charter document where you do a description of not the solution, but the issue you're trying to solve. So in this case, it's called background or current environment. You can rename that to what suits you, but essentially you're just describing the problem that you're seeking to solve. But in this case, we're doing it in a little more depth. So here you see, rather than a sentence, I've got a paragraph. And I'm just really describing, and in this case, I went pretty broad. So specifically the issue, which was repeated instruction by science librarians, and we see I'm already limiting my scope. It's our science librarians, there's 3 of them. And then I also went in to say that, me, emerging technologies librarian, I'm experimenting with this kind of stuff, so we wanted to merge. So there you're getting the whole environment, not just the specific problem, but also the fact that I was seeing that I had a way to interact too. That's part of our current environment, blah, blah. So anyway, description of our situation. The next piece is objectives. So there's 2 kinds of objectives, and usually this is called business objectives. I was finding the word business not really resonating here, so for the moment I put general objectives, which is fairly meaningless term, but so whatever works for you. But so general and project. So for general, the way that I think about this is your general objectives are what your project sort of looking outward, your project team and your project looking and speaking to everyone else. So what is this project going to accomplish? What are the things that you're going to be able to do? And these are the kinds of things you can look back and say, did we do this, right? So in this case, so we're providing rich media, we're lightening the workload. These are the things you would tell other people, right? What this project will accomplish. Project objectives are internal. So what are we going to do as part of this project? The objectives we have to keep the scope of this in control is often one way. So in that case, I'm saying things like use methods and tools that are easy and fast. So you see the difference between sort of an objective for the project versus the general objective of the project. See what I mean? Sort of internal workings objectives versus what the project will accomplish objectives. So again, you might start out with 1 or 2, and this will grow. Now, notice we still have not specified this solution, and that's deliberate. However, you will probably have a solution in mind as you write this up, and that's okay. Again, in this case, this is stage 1. We're at the very beginning of our process. This is what we're envisioning, and it's going to morph and change over time. That's okay. But so in this case, I kind of knew in my head, even though so far in the background, there's nothing specifically necessarily saying that we have to make a video or that there's going to be screencasting involved, but I kind of figured there would be. So that's showing up in here, and that's okay. Okay, so now we're still talking about our environment. Now we're getting to the specific scope of this project. And this little graph, this little chart, included, excluded, really, really powerful. This just puts it in black and white, and I've found people respond really well to this. What's included in the project? What are the things you're planning to do that you will definitely do as part of this project? So this might seem blindingly obvious to you. That's okay. You put that stuff in anyway. Just because it's obvious to you doesn't mean it's going to be obvious to everyone else on your team. And the excluded, I find this a challenge because I'm always focused on, the things I want to do, not what I don't want to do. But really think through, what could someone else looking at this project think might be included that you do not think is included, or even things surely no one would think is included. Put it in there. We're not rebuilding the website. We're not going to, shoot this level of film. We're not going to make long or nothing longer than 3 minutes or whatever. We'll just be very explicit of what you will not be doing. This chart will grow as you speak to your stakeholders and your team members. Every time something occurs to you, like, well, oh no, that's going over the line, write it down. It's also a great conversation starter of what you think is included and what you think is excluded. You'll really get a sense of where everybody sees the scope. And these are the kinds of things that are going to determine your timelines. How much time do you actually need to do all the things that you're claiming you're including in your project? Next, deliverables or expected outcomes. In this case, the project's very, very clear. The deliverable is an actual product, an actual thing. So we can say, look, there it is, we're done. So if this is a simple one. If you have a service where the outcomes are harder to point to, then this would be probably a longer section. But this is where you say, what are we going to accomplish? So you really get to have that conversation. What are you delivering? And how are you going to know you delivered it? Your outcomes. Again, morph with time. The parameters. So here's where we start getting into the things that are going to make this difficult to do, or what might cause failure. So your constraints. What do you know? Time is always a constraint. You always have a shorter timeline than you want. So that's always one. Do you have all the materials you need? Do you have all the people you need? Think through, what are the things that might constrain you as part of this project, and write all that down. Again, getting feedback. You have a meeting, get feedback. What else do we see as a constraint? That's a really great, hard for me, really great conversation to have. Your critical assumptions. This is probably, some people's minds work this way. I find this hard. What are you assuming is true that will make this project work? So, think it through. Are we assuming that, I'm thinking of some of those Second Life projects that we talked about at Internet Librarian. Are we assuming students are there? Are we assuming students have a computer that can run this software? Are we, those things. Write them all down. What are all the assumptions? Writing them down will really help you see, are we making so many assumptions that we can't, are these reasonable? And you can even, once you've written this all down, give this to a third party even to see, are these assumptions reasonable? And the critical success factors, another way of looking at this whole same range of items. What do you need to have in order to see success in this project, which is also forcing you to define success as well, which goes back to your outcomes just above here. So what are the critical success factors? In this case, one of them that I added here, which you can imagine how important this was, a critical success factors for this particular project was that each librarian participating had to have all of their teaching materials ready, prepared, ready to go. We were spending no time as part of this project in building those materials or editing them or modifying them. That was not part of, that's out of scope. So you can see that made a huge difference when it came time to start doing this project, because they understood. It was in the document, we discussed it, that stuff needed to be ready by a certain date. So that made the project a lot easier to proceed with. And finally, so you see we started, I'm just going to scroll up here, started at the top describing our environment, and at the bottom of the document, we're describing so product, in this case we did have an actual deliverable item, a product or a service, the description of it. So again, not the solution precisely, so you're not getting into the specifics of the solution, but you're saying this is what we're going to do. So in this case, we're saying we're going to package 3 existing library instruction sessions into a variety of media that can be put on the website. Done. One line. So you describe the whole thing. You've got one chunk there to describe what it is. This document is, you get together and discuss this, and this is the document that helps guide you through the rest of the project.